Welcome back to another Telltale video. I'm continuing my exploration of Manly Wade Wellman with his third story. I've so far read his second story, Back to the Beast. His first story, I could not find anywhere to read it, so I haven't read that one at all, and probably won't ever be able to get a copy. And Back to the Beast, of course, was published in Weird Tales and is very much a horror story, a Wolfman type story. I just rewatched The Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. That's a great movie. I love that one. So I read Back to the Beast. That was horror. Now we move on to When Planets Clashed by Wellman, which is very much science fiction and very much space opera, and published in Wonder Stories Quarterly in spring of 1931. And Wellman did write, even though he's most known for his fantasy stories, he did write a lot of science fiction in the 1930s and 1940s, and even some after that. But after 1950, he was very much focused on fantasy with the success of John the Balladeer. So he didn't really become that well known for science fiction, but he did write it. And When Planets Clashed was his first science fiction story. Like I said, Wonder Stories Quarterly, spring of 1931. I don't have a physical copy. It's not available in anything except that issue of Wonder Stories Quarterly that I can find. And I could not get a hold of an affordable copy of Wonder Stories Quarterly for spring of 1931, or a cheap enough one in good enough condition. So I read a PDF for free online. Great alternative to spending hundreds of dollars on these beat up old science fiction pulp magazines, especially if the story turns out to be a bit of a dog. So When the Planets Clashed is about a guy named Jack. His dad is named Jack. And it's part of a 2-story series about Jack Stillwell. But Jack is a very minor character in this. This story focuses on his son, Jack. Okay, got that? Story number 3, he was pretty young. And it was the 1930s in pulp magazines. Okay, so here's the story. Here's the basic synopsis. Jack is on Mars, living and working on Mars. He falls in love with a Martian woman. His best friend is her brother. And then tensions mount and war is declared between Earth and Mars. So Jack is ordered to return to Earth. Doesn't really want to, but he's an Earthman. To stay on Mars, he would either end up dead or in prison. So he goes back to Earth, and being young, he gets enlisted. And being enlisted, and being the hero of the story, he gets sent on a one-man spy mission because they believe Mars has established a base on the dark side of the moon in order to carry out bombing raids on Earth. Because they're doing the bombing raids on Earth. They figure out the only way they could do it as quickly as they have been, they have to be pretty local. So they got to be on the dark side of the moon. So Jack goes and investigates by himself and finds that they do have this really, really huge mile-long spaceship parked on the dark side of the moon. And he gets inside and he sabotages the spaceship in a way that it blows up, killing all the Martians, including his best friend who is on the ship, and he knows his best friend's on the ship. He meets his best friend on the ship, and he still goes and does the deed anyway and walks away, leaving his friend dead on the dark side of the moon. Okay, what would a really professional, excellent writer do with this? There is so much drama here, so much possibility. Just the the inner turmoil of having just killed his best friend in service to Earth. I mean, one route the road could go is he could refuse to do this and side with the Martians and totally totally put one over on Earth. Or he could go ahead and do the deed, but then be torn apart internally by the emotional conflict of having killed his best friend and betrayed the love of his life. At any rate, there's no way I would expect him to just walk away from this. Yes, he would become a hero on Earth, but he would be very conflicted about it. And at the end of the story, when he goes back to Mars and meets the love of his life, she should just kick his ass around the room. Or at least have nothing further to do with him. That's what I would expect. But what does Wellman do? He has her go, oh, that's okay, and forgives him. And, so this guy walks away from this whole extreme conflict, which could just have been used to create this awesome story. He totally skips all that and just has this guy get scot-free out of the whole situation. Gets the woman he loves, Earth gets saved, he's a hero, he's a big shot. Everything's good. So, very disappointing that, any idiot could see what was staring him in the face. I'm not a writer, and I can see how great a story this could have been. And Wellman just ditches it. Just completely walks away from all the possibilities and takes the easy way out to wrapping up the story. So, not recommended unless you are a Manly Wade Wellman completist or someone who's a really, really big fan of 1930s space opera, because among typical 1930s space opera stories, it was fun. It was okay. I would have liked something more sophisticated, but most of the writers of this time weren't capable of something more sophisticated. They just weren't that great of writers. That's why most of them stopped writing when Campbell upped the bar in 1939. The next story he wrote, Faithful Footsteps, was published in the June 1931 issue of Mind Magic, and I can't find PDF of that. I can't find a physical copy of that at any price. I can't find hide nor hair. The story has not been reprinted in any collections or anthologies that I can find. That story is just lost, at least to me. I can't get a hold of it anywhere. So I am forced to skip number 4 and move on to number 5, which is the sequel, the second Jack Stillwell story, called The Discman of Jupiter. Now, being a sequel to When Planets Clashed, I'm not expecting anything better from this story, but we'll see. I'll give it a shot. But it was published in the September 1931 issue of Wonder Stories. Even though I kind of expect this to be a dog of a story, I'm going to continue doing this, reading all of them, because of this thing of having read When Planets Clashed and knowing what Wellman is going to be capable of when he writes Oh Ugly Bird. This is why I'm doing all these, reading everything I can get my hands on projects, is because I want to see step by step how Wellman develops into a real professional writer from having done something that was very amateurish and missed the boat. I want to take that journey and see him improving as a writer and see how his ideas and themes develop through the next. There's going to be 20 years between When Planets Clashed and Oh Ugly Bird. So he's got 20 years to get his act together. And I know he will. I want to see that happening. I know it's going to happen gradual. It's not an overnight thing. But at some point along the way here, something must have clicked with him to make him the great fantasy writer that he became. He actually did write a lot of science fiction before Oh Ugly Bird. He was probably better known for science fiction than for fantasy or horror before the 1950s. But then in the 1950s, with the strength of the John the Balladeer stories, he became very much noted for fantasy. So I hope you'll join me on this journey and all the other journeys I'm taking. We've recently seen Harlan Ellison develop out of his early days and start to really push the bar on his writing with Johnny Slice's Stooley, doing something very different and doing something very bold. And so like us and subscribe to us and come on back for more of these. I'm going to stay here and keep doing these. Whether you watch them or not, I'll be here. But I really hope you're here joining me on this. And I hope you're enjoying these videos. And so I'll see you in more of them.